A lot of people are familiar with the basic story of Buddha, even if they don't know anything else about the religion. Young Prince Siddhartha Gautama is spending his days enjoying in his palace, indulging in the carnal pleasures of life. One day, however, he sees an old, sick, dying man. Rattled by this, the prince can't get anything out of pure hedonism anymore, and he sets out of his palace to contemplate life. Meditating under a tree, he reaches enlightenment and realizes the core tenets of his new religion. Rather than leaving all the other living beings behind, Buddha does not enter nirvana, but instead stays in this world to spread his message, so others too could become enlightened and escape suffering. By nature, we are all stuck. Even at the very best, where we are now is just not fulfilling. Something gnaws like a tiny rock in a shoe. In some other place, in another state of being, things would be better. You are kind of like looking across a river, where the other bank is so far away that you can barely see it. You want to cross, but there is no bridge, no boats or anything else. Your time is spent on looking for passage, or trying to figure out how to make that bridge or those boats yourself. Maybe tomorrow you get lucky. At any rate, you keep on going. Other thinkers stumbled on the same problem in other avenues, and very likely they weren't thinking about Buddhism at all. For Sigmund Freud, the problem was our relation to other people. As babies, we get everything we could ever want or need from our mother. This one person makes us completely fulfilled, and the world is good and safe and complete. When we grow up, however, we need to become our own individuals, and mothers need to get work and other things done. When little kids are brought into daycare the first time, the first days are really rough, as the children are now separated from their parents. It will be better later on, but for Freud, we subconsciously remember the original state of being, us being completely fulfilled by this one person as babies. This becomes the original trauma, and in the Bible you can find the story of Adam and Eve being cast out of the paradise, never being able to return. For Freud, archaic stories like that are the representation of us growing up. When you fall in love, the passion at the start of the relationship can be heady. As time goes on, many irritate their partners to no end with their idiosyncrasies, and mundane life grinds the passion down. A messy divorce or a breakup is a bitter price for all the effort a person put into his or her relationship. A second, third or fourth marriage wait in the future. The love of a relationship is not equal to the love an infant gets from his mother. There is also the classic stereotype of a person who didn't get as a child the love he needed, and as an adult he tries to find a partner who could be a substitute for that parental love, or maybe he tries to find a broken person to fix, since his own childhood was so unfunctional. At any rate, our relationships cannot make that bridge to the other side. Besides the relations between people, we try to make specific things or goals into these passageways to a better place. Jacques Lacan, another psychoanalyst, talked about the objet A, this goal, action or possession that could be the desired state of being. In this one podcast I listened, top jiu-jitsu athlete Greg Jones talked about putting up his own gym. He just wanted to train and spend time with his buddies, so having his own place could be just that, but in reality he got all the headaches of a small business owner. You need to learn marketing, deal with difficult customers, worry about all the small practicalities of your own place, and then teach the classes, usually working 6 days a week, maybe more. His idea, the thing that he wanted and what seemed like a simple wish, really was unreachable. I think everyone knows people who work very hard and want to earn a lot of money, so they can just retire early, kick back and enjoy life. But once that is done and they sit in a lounge chair, look at the sunset and drink a piña colada, well, what's next? If they were that hard-working by nature to begin with, often they get bored very fast and just go back to work. What is enticing is the thought of it, a nice vacation without the stresses and worries of regular life. I remember seeing summer beach-themed updates for online games like League of Legends and Final Fantasy XIV. Beautiful people hanging out in the sun with all their friends. In single-player games, like the second part of the Final Fantasy VII Remake series and Persona 5, you have plenty of similar scenes. You can even take out the fantasy of the idyllic summer holiday and tropical paradise, and just end up with hanging out with people you truly care about. Object A is not necessarily some transcendental cosmic enlightenment. we can barely imagine, but the simple desire of a real friendship and connection. But in this world, a thing like that can be just as fantastical as ghosts and goblins. In the modern age, in the loneliest time in human history, what you get are podcasts and virtual worlds as surrogates. Even if you are not that familiar with philosophy, a lot of people know about Plato's theory of forms. In the theory, the attributes of the world kind of exist outside of the world we know, and if a thing here possesses any sort of an attribute, it partakes or borrows from the original and pure source that we can't access. So if a flower is beautiful, it borrows this beautifulness from the form of beauty. If a man is brave, that power comes from the idea of bravery and so on. My artistic skills are extremely limited and rudimentary, but even with a simple doodle that is mildly pleasant, you have suddenly manifested something that is funny, warm, inviting, or pretty, with just a few lines on a paper. I would say that Lacan's object A, the idea of us sipping margaritas while watching the sunset or being with true friends or anything else we fantasize about, is really just partaking in the theory of forms. We initially take it as face value that we can access the source itself, the form of beauty or happiness or whatever else, but those can just exist in this world as borrowed elements. The fantasy is the form, not the stuff that we actually have here with us. Societies themselves need the object A, whether they are deliberately manufactured or they form organically. Philosopher Slavoj Žižek gave this wonderfully illuminating example. When he was a young man in Yugoslavia, if you didn't try to do anything political, the communist regime left you alone. As a result, any single thing that was bad in your day, it was raining, there was a hole in your sock, and so on, could be more or less seriously blamed on the government, since you didn't have to actively fear them despite the oppression. You got enough food and you could live your life, but you periodically were without the small luxuries of life. For example, the stores were out of coffee or butter 1 week in a month, so when you got those things you were genuinely happy, and you didn't get used to having them all the time. Besides these two things, West Germany was just right there, not that far off, and on TV and radio you could see and hear West German programming. Many people told to themselves that if things really do get unbearable, they could and would jump to the West and enjoy the cushy life. But of course, most people weren't really seriously thinking about doing that. But fantasy gave them enough strength to go on with their boring, bland and restricted existence. Zizek commented that real happiness is actually just this kind of limbo state, where you can exist on subsistence level and the greener pastures are just there if you would reach enough. In the modern society, the fad of a van life is this sort of thing too. If you get fed up enough of the capitalistic rat race, you can just buy a van, sell everything else and go travel the world as free as a bird. The reality of this sort of a lifestyle is pretty self-evident, as you change your apartment to a cramped box of a van, face all the car problems and so on. The game of lottery is another version. With just pocket change, you can buy a lottery ticket, and every weekend there is a possibility to become rich and ride into the sunset. When you fail to win, you can try again the next week and so on. The dream of the prize money keeps you floating even if you would find your life otherwise unsatisfying. Unfunctional societies can keep on going more easily once there is a collective object A to stabilize it. A related topic to all this are the hero systems societies build. All cultures and times will create narratives of what constitutes a successful life, and this lifestyle will keep the people in society productive and make them strive towards fulfillment in a way that is dictated to them. In the modern consumer society, this unavoidably means buying stuff. When you own your own house, a white picket fence, 2 cars, holiday trips every summer and Christmas, and maybe a boat, besides all the daily consumer goods, you are the salt of the earth. A regular conservative person like Hank Hill from the King of the Hill series is just this. In the Middle Ages in Europe, the focus of times was on religion, so the main point was to work hard for your feudal lord, be pious, and the prize of heaven was waiting for you in the afterlife. In the times of war and in warrior societies, the fighting man was the archetype everyone should aspire to be. After the French Revolution, there was a new idea of being able to die for one's country, and Napoleon seized on this new culture with 2 hands, so suddenly he was able to amass gigantic armies compared to his opponents, who just had the old-type mercenary armies. A Viking could, after a death in battle, enter the hallowed hall of Valhalla and feast with the Valkyries. A medieval Christian could end up in heaven with the angels and Jesus, and a modern man can buy a popcorn machine. By doing the things that you are told to, you are set on your way to the object A. So we are stuck with hitting our heads against a glass wall. We can travel on a road that we can convince ourselves of being the most important road possible, but we are never ever reaching our destination. In the book Good Entertainment, philosopher Byung-Chul Han writes about Immanuel Kant like this, quote, "In Kant's anthropology, pain is raised to a life principle. Only thanks to pain do we feel alive. To feel one's life, to enjoy oneself, is thus nothing more than to feel oneself continuously driven to leave the present state, which must therefore be a pain that recurs just as often as the present. Contentment is beyond our grasp. As an incentive to activity, nature has put pain in the human being that he cannot escape from. Pain holds deadly lifelessness at bay. To be absolutely contented in life would be idle rest and the standstill of all incentives, or the dulling of sensations and the activity connected with them. However, such a state is no more compatible with the intellectual life of the human being than the stopping of a heart in animal's body, where death follows inevitably unless a new stimulus through pain is sent. Work is thus the best way of enjoying one's life, because it is an arduous occupation, disagreeable in itself and pleasing only through success. Pain spurs us always to progress towards what is better. The path to betterment is via doloris. Pain is healthy, it postpones death." End quote. So why is life so unfulfilling? I keep glancing at the effects of evolution. Back in our distant past, when we were all hunter-gatherers, if you would hunt down a gazelle or find a big patch of blueberries in the forest, you were the man and all in your tribe could eat. But if you would stop, as in this one success would make you totally fulfilled, what then? Why would there be any reason to continue and spread your genes and survive if something suddenly would make you whole and complete? By having a constant craving, a hole that can be filled, the hunter-gatherer would keep on moving, his tribe would survive and his genes would spread until the very end of this individual's life. We still have no idea why and how man became a self-aware and intelligent being, but I keep thinking that it was a complete accident, an unseen mutation, and the rest of the traits of a human being simply aren't compatible with this intelligence. As the result, we have all sorts of undesirable effects, like this sense of unfulfillment and possibly human cruelty, but that is a story for another day. So we keep on going. The religious aspect of this void is looked into more deeply in my other essay, Seeking Enlightenment. Thanks for listening, have a good one.